Cape Town. I don't know if either I'm getting slower or people are getting more impatient, but boy, have I had people hoot at me this week. Yes, when I'm trying to think, yesterday I was pulled up at a stop street, and it was or a robot, and it was quite a long wait. And I could feel this, like, I don't know, if you don't have curly hair, maybe, I don't know, maybe it happens if you have straight hair, but there's always this, like, sometimes this like curl that like tickles, and it's irritating, and I could feel it. And I was waiting, and as I looked in the mirror to grab it and flick it out of my face, obviously in that moment the light turns green. I mean, it must have been 2 seconds, not even, just that time. And the guy behind me pulls out, screams past me. I was very thankful that I had grace and I didn't say what I was thinking. That was a victory for me. Lord bless him and keep him safe, because he is driving rather crazily. But it made me think about how, I don't know, I've noticed it so much more, how we hate to wait. And in fact, when we have to wait, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in the Home Affairs queue. It's the most positive, uplifting space. You know, people are just so patient and encouraging in those times. You never hear hours of complaining and moaning. Okay, we sometimes are not our best when we are waiting, not on our best behavior, because waiting can cause us to become impatient, and we live in a world of microwave generation. Have you ever stood in front of the microwave and go, hurry up, I haven't got 45 seconds to waste? Okay, we see ourselves doing that regularly, or maybe it's just me. But I think what is sometimes a challenge is that God is a slow cooker kind of God, not the microwave generation. And often what he has in store for us doesn't pop out of the microwave in 45 seconds. It's in the slow cooker. And it's there for a reason and for a purpose. So I struggled with the title of what I wanted to call this, but I've landed on, I'm going to call it He's in the Waiting. And if you would go with me to Joshua chapter 1. I'm going to read verse 2. If I can see it. Sorry. And it starts with, verse 2 says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. I'm going to pause there for a moment. And my first point this morning is that transition has a timeline. And oftentimes we find ourselves in, well, I do think that we spend most of our lives in a transition period. And I'm hoping that this will bring comfort to you, to know that I've noticed in a lot of stories in the Bible that there seems to be this little pattern. And in fact, it wasn't until I was here for the ladies' event that you had, and Claire was talking about the stages, and she used the tomb of Jesus in the tomb, and there was the death, and then there was the time in the tomb, and then there was the resurrection. And this scripture is much the same. The verse starts with Moses is dead. And very often we are in seasons in our life. Our life is going to be seasons until he comes again. There's going to be seasons. It says, the Bible says in Genesis 8, it says, for as long as the earth remains, there will be seasons, there will be times, okay? And it starts with Moses is dead. And very often your transition, or the move towards your triumph, or the move towards your victory, or the move towards the promise that God has for you, starts with Moses is dead. Starts with death. Something has to die. Something has to stop. For something to become new, there had to be old to have new. And that old has to die. And oftentimes we get stuck at that point because everything is dying. And we feel like maybe we're doing something wrong. But in fact, I'm actually going to go to Genesis 8, verse 22. If you want to go there, you're welcome to join me. This is a rhythm that God set in place at the foundations of the earth. Genesis 8, verse 22. And he says, verse 22, while the earth remains. And I don't know about you, but I can still see the earth. I'm standing on it, so it's still remaining, which means that this next few scriptures are still in play. Okay, and the very, very first one says, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night. Okay, we're understanding the cold. We're experiencing that right now. We know the heat is coming. I'm looking forward to it. Not rushing the cold, but I'm looking forward to the heat. Day, and we know what's going to happen tonight is going to be night. Okay? And it says it shall not cease. So God has already put into the foundations and the rhythms of the earth that there will always be these rhythms, these patterns. And the one I want to focus on is seed time and harvest. And I know that in the English Bible, it's got seed time and harvest. Some of you might even have a comma there. Seed time, comma, and harvest. I've been checking reports this week, so I'm very in tune with commas. Should the comma be there? Shouldn't it be there? But in the Hebrew Bible, they don't use punctuation. In fact, in the Hebrew, they use the word ve, V-E, which means and. But what it also means is when they say seed time and harvest, I think I wrote it down, it's zera ve kester, which means that it's a package deal. It means that they were intentionally tied together. It's not a list, like I'm going to the shop and I'm buying milks and eggs, and it's not that kind of and. This is an intentional joining. So that means it's a package deal. So when there's seed time, there will be harvest. Much like when there's cold, there will be heat, and when there's day, there will be night, like the seasons. But God is saying to Moses in this, if you can see that those other things are happening, you can understand that I have legally joined these two things together, seed time and harvest. And it's part of my covenant to you, that when there is a seed planted, there will be a harvest from that seed. But I did think that God was kind of sneaky by sticking that little word in the middle. We're all good with the seed. When God gives us the dream, the idea, the prophecy, whatever happens, the instruction or the moment that you realize that things have changed and that seed is planted, we love that time. And we look forward to the harvest when everything comes to fruition. But he sneaks in that little word in the middle, time. Seed, time, harvest. And it's often that time in the middle we don't account for. We want the microwave, seed, harvest. Even when there's pregnancy, seed, 9 long months. It's very long if you've been there. And then harvest. It's not seed, boop, thank goodness, actually. I think especially when it's the first one. I think I just knocked something. Got it? Balanced. I think there's a very important need for those 9 months, because many of us need to adjust. We've got to suddenly start changing our thinking. As ladies, we change our eating habits, we change our diet, we start thinking about the fact that it's not just me anymore. That time is such an important part of the journey. And when God puts the idea in your heart, he has every intention of the harvest. When that seed is planted, he sees time. He doesn't see time in a line. He sees it, boom, seed and harvest. It's all in one picture for him. Unfortunately, we've got to live on the linear path, and we've got to go through the seed and then the time and then the harvest. There are a couple of other examples in the Bible where people go through this phase. Let's think about Joseph. Joseph is the favored son, gets the coat of many colors. I always want to burst into song on that point. I shall refrain. And then he gets thrown in the pit. Suddenly that life of favor and whatever, dead. He's in a pit, being sold as a slave. And he gets to the palace. We know that comes. But let's not forget the 10 to 13 years of prison between pit and palace. Okay? Sometimes there is a wait and a time frame we are not in control of here. And this was 10 or 13 to 13 years. But it was at a time for Joseph to build his faith. Then there's Lazarus, another story. Lazarus actually physically dies. It's not a metaphor. He's actually dead. He's in the tomb. Okay? And then I want to read this because this always floors me. John 11. Now, Lazarus wasn't just any person in the Bible. He was actually a friend of Jesus. So, you would think that when they send word to say he's sick, Jesus would get a move on. Okay? But this is the part that just gets me every time. It's John 11, verse 5. And it says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus." So these are important people in his life here on earth. "So when he heard that he was sick," now I'm just going to take a little bit of license here. If I were writing a story, he's building up. He loved them. They're his friends. And then he hears that they are sick. And then what would follow would not be these words, I can promise you. He stayed 2 more days. That sounds like he's rushing off to help his friends, right? And I always think, what was the point of that? Okay? Sorry, my Bible is heavy. Woohoo! This is the test of my faith, not faith of my eyes, right? So sometimes, thank you. Now, sometimes the delay, Jesus does go. He discovers that Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days, and then he calls him, and there's a great awakening, and Lazarus comes out, right? But why the 2 days? It doesn't tell us. It doesn't really say exactly why. So sometimes, but what I want you to take from that is that sometimes when God plants the seed, there's an intended delay. He intends for there to be a time period. It's not because you've done something wrong. It's not because you're out of his will. Suddenly you get this incredible promise and then everything goes crazy. All right? There's sometimes an intended delay. And of course, I've already mentioned this, another example, just the most ultimate example is Jesus in the tomb. Jesus dies. Now, I'm going to use Friday. I know historically Friday actually isn't the day he died on, because there's no ways that from Friday to Sunday, that's 3 days. It doesn't kind of work. But let's say we've got the death on Friday. And we see that as victory now, because we know what that means. But there's the death on Friday, as a seed has to go into the ground and die. And then there's the silent Saturday. And in fact, the disciples were actually cowering in fear, hiding. There's a period of time before something happens that they had to wait. And then the resurrection, exciting part, the Sunday. I'll come back to that in a moment. But what I wanted to warn you about is that the devil's playground seems to be in the middle, when you're stuck in the middle. Because the devil can't interrupt the seed. When God plants something, it's planted, and the harvest is guaranteed. But if he can disrupt you in the middle and delay it or get you off track, that would be a perfect time. If I was an enemy, that would be my spot. That's when the seed is the most vulnerable. If you think about it, when you first plant a seed in the ground, that's a very vulnerable time. Once the plant starts growing, it's a bit sturdier. But in that beginning stages, if it's not got the right soil and not got the right water and not got the right sunlight, that can be dead and dead. Nothing's coming out. That's just dead. Dead. Okay, very dead. D-E-D, dead. Okay. So this is the best part of the story for me. And my second point is that courage is a person. It's That's my second point. So if we can go back, you're going to have to keep your finger in Joshua 1 because I'm going to be coming back to Joshua a couple times. Okay, now remember that Moses is dead and it wasn't Joseph. Joshua is standing and he's now, you're it. He died and you're it. And you're going to take the people over to this promised land that they've been walking around the desert for quite a long time for. And now suddenly it's him. You're it. And these are the words that Jesus says, and I'm going to read in verse 5. It says, "No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you." Verse 6, "Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide an inheritance, the land which I swore to their fathers to give them." And I'll be honest with you, I very often used to think that the Lord said that to him for the victory. So when you go and inherit that land, that's when you've got to be strong and courageous. But the more I've been reading the story, and when I started to look up some of the words in the Hebrew and Greek, so I apologize in advance for my pronunciations, it's made me think that maybe God was saying, take courage, be strong and of good courage, because in that moment, he's called to be the guy. And he's got to make the decision to be the one who leads the people. He's in the waiting right now, Joshua. He's in that phase between Moses died, now you're it, and over here for what we take over and we inherit the land. And he's here going, oh my gosh, it's me. I got to do this. Maybe I can, it's not too late to run, right? I mean, what's 40 years in the desert? Okay? I mean, I just also want to point out, he's been already told that this land is full of giants, and it's an intimidating harvest that he's heading towards. Even though the Lord says, I've given you the land, and da-da-da. God's saying, be strong and courageous. Okay? That word is a double word. Let me just find it. Get this correct. The Hebrew, it's Kazak ve, there's that ve again, Kazak ve amatz, which literally means be physically unyielding. We sang it this morning. To stand, to be physically unyielding. This is me. I'm unyielding. Nothing's coming past. I'm standing my ground. And internally brave. Okay, now I want to jump to another story where the similar phrase is used. Because sometimes they translate this phrase to take courage or take heart. Now, we've heard that many times. Very often when Jesus was about to perform a miracle, he would say, take heart, or he would say, take courage. Okay? Because the miracle needed to be way more than just the outward physical. When they lowered that man down, the 4 friends lowered him down, he says to him, before he performs the miracle, he says, take heart. It's this saying that he says, because he knows that there's an internal thing that needs to happen first, that has to change. Okay, so the story is in Matthew 14. Keep your finger in Joshua 1. Matthew 14. And he says a similar, obviously this is now in Greek, that was Hebrew, but it's similar. It's got a similar meaning, but this one really jumps out at me. Chapter 14, verse 27. Okay, now this is when Jesus walks on the sea. Okay, so he's told the disciples to get into the boat and to go over to the other side. Can you see what's happening? He has an instruction. You're going to get to the other side, and then there's this gap in between the sea. And it was smooth sailing all the way. I'm lying, right? Jesus sees that the waves are picking up, the wind is howling, and it's now the storm out at sea. And if you've ever watched those, where they show those ships when there's a storm at sea and the waves, it's terrifying. I'd hate to be on one of those ships Okay, well, they were on one of those boats, and they see this figure, and they think it might be a ghost. And then Peter says, and they say, I'm going to go actually from verse 26. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it's a ghost. And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer. That phrase is the same as take courage, take heart, be of good cheer. And then he says, it is I, do not be afraid. Now, be of good cheer, it is I. When Jesus said it is I, it wasn't just a simple, it's Jesus. That it is I in Greek is eimi. It is the exact same words that God spoke to Moses when he said, I am the I am. Tell them that I am sent you. That I am, and this, it is I, is exactly the same phrase in the Greek. And notice that he said beforehand, take courage, which is Tharseo, eimi, which means take courage because the I am is in the storm with you. What Jesus was saying is that courage is not based on self-reliance. It's not based on something that you have to muster up. When he says take courage, it's not, right, clench your fists, grit your teeth, dig up everything you've got inside of you, and it's all about what you can muster up. Because the truth is, you're going to run out of steam. You might be able to muster up a little bit of courage in the beginning, but you're going to run out of courage, especially when the storm is raging and it's not relenting. You can't keep digging deep all the time from yourself. Okay? They often talk about prisoners of war, who a lot of them, there's actually a book written by a survivor who was I think it was in the Vietnam War, and he was caught as a prisoner. And he said, and he was the only, I think he was imprisoned for 15, no, it wasn't, can't remember how long it was. It was it was a long time. I don't want to make it up. But it was a long time. And in that time, he was the only one who was, eventually the war ended, and he was the only one saved. And in his book that he wrote, he said many people came and went. And he said there were three groups of people. There were those that were immediately discouraged. There were those who just, why is this happening? We've been caught. We're never going to make it. Completely despondent, completely discouraged. He said they were usually the first to go. They didn't make it. And then he said you had a second group who were the eternal hopeful. Don't worry, we're going to be home by Christmas. And then Christmas would come and go and they weren't home. Don't worry, you're going to be home by Easter. Easter would come and go. And after a while, they would run out of positivity. Because you can't muster it up yourself. You can't have your hope in something that's not eternal. And then he speaks about the fact that there was a third group who accepted that I'm in this situation and I'm going to make the most of it while I'm here. And he said, we survived. Because it was, but what's happening here is the word that he uses for courage, the noun is Tharseo, which literally translates to being emboldened from within. It is a courage that is generated because you are in the presence of your Creator. It's not a courage that comes from you. It's the fact that Jesus lives inside of us. It's the courage that comes from Him. So, God doesn't just tell Joshua, find some inner strength, suck it up, you can do this, off you go, and Joshua's got to do this on his own. He says, I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I am is in the storm with you. I am is in the period between the seed and the harvest, between the death and the resurrection, between the promise and the promise fulfilled. I am is in the middle. He's what's that song? Stuck in the middle with you. He's stuck in the middle with you because he wants to be, because when his presence is there, you can have courage. And he says, take courage. When he says Tharseo, he says, take courage because I am here. I am in the storm. I am in the middle with you. It's not a feeling that you can pump up. It's a person who steps in. You can stand firm in the waiting time, in the storm, when the waves, when the enemy is at full strength with the lies. Did you really hear that from God? Did he really say that? When the medical report hasn't changed yet. When the bank account is still the same or worse. When the marriage is still cold. When you're holding on to something and you are waiting for the manifestation, he says, I am in the storm with you. It reminds me of that poem, the Footsteps poem, where they see the two sets of footprints on the beach, and then there's suddenly to one, and the guy says, but Lord, in my hardest times of my life, there's only one set of footprints. Why did you leave me? And in the poem, God says to him, I didn't leave you. That's when I was carrying you. God says to you, InCourage, Tharseo, take courage. You've got a promise that you are carrying. You've got a seed that's been planted. But he's here in the waiting. This is the time when he says, I'll carry you through. Remember about the seed. The seed is at the most vulnerable at this time. The enemy is cunning. This is the part where he knows, if I'm going to do a derailing mission here, this is when it's going to happen. This is going to be now. Because it's really great. You got all the feels from the service where you get that prophetic word. And then Monday happens, and the microwave didn't go ting, and everything that was said in that word is there for you on Monday morning. Okay, it's in the slow cooker. Takes a little longer to stew. So my final point, third point, is dig deep. Dig deep. In Joshua 1, if you're still there, God has told him, he's laid out the timeline. Moses is dead. There's going to be a time now. He says, but in that time, he says to him, have courage, be strong, have courage, be unyielding, be unwavering, stay steadfast, my soul. Right? Right? I have us sing. Okay. And then he says, and then he goes into this whole thing, and it kind of feels like not so like emotional language. It's not the pretty language. It kind of feels like, okay, God, calm down. Okay, because he goes, be strong and very courageous, that you may observe this. Sorry, I'm reading in verse 7. That you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you, or to do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of law shall not depart from your mouth. A whole lot of rules, tons of instructions here. But you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. Have I not commanded you? Here he tells them again, be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So he says, in the middle of all of this, it's very feely. Charismatics, we like the feelies. All right? We've got this beautiful promise. Okay, initial shock, Josh, you're it. Initial shock. Then God comes in, and you're just like, oh, God, you're always there for me. You know, that's that service where that word comes, or you're having your time with the Lord, and that verse pops out, and you just have that confirmation. Oh, and it's just, warm and fuzzies. I love those days. Those are the best. And then he says, have courage, because it's Monday, and the fuzzies have worn off, and the reality sets in that nothing's actually physically changed. Just the seed's been planted. But now I've actually got to go Monday, Tuesday, just joking. I've got to get through the days, right? I've got to get through the days. And he says, take courage, I'm with you. And that's also warm and fuzzy. That's also awesome. Because God is awesome. And it's okay to have the warm and fuzzies. But then he says, here's the law, here's the rules, don't depart from it, Why is he telling him all these things? He knows all this stuff. Why is he reminding him? Because he's reminding him that in this time especially, it's time to dig deep, Joshua. This is not going to be an easy little, it's not like in the Disney, and princess dress gown, I'm ready for the ball, right? It doesn't work like that. And sometimes Christians, we can get disillusioned. I'm talking to myself, not you, obviously. Right? But we get disillusioned because we want that magic wand. We want the genie in the lamp. God is the genie. We do all the right things. Tick, tick, tick. Come to church, rub the lamp, and we want the miracle now. Okay, I'll wait a couple days, but not more than that, and don't make it hard. Okay, I want to cross from this side to this side on the river with no storm in between, please, Lord. This is my request, right? But it doesn't happen like that. Because there's an enemy out there who doesn't want you to get to the other side. He doesn't want you to reap that harvest. And just like that little plant is planted in the soil, do you know what it does first? I actually had a video. I should have brought it. When you plant a seed in the ground, the first thing that it does before it sprouts the leaves is it sends down a root as deep as possible, and then it sends out roots sideways. And it establishes an incredibly strong root system. And that's all happening while you're watching the sand. Nothing's happening. What's happening? There's lots happening. You just can't see it with your eyes. But that seed is doing the most important part. Because if it doesn't do that job well, when that little green leaf pops up and there isn't a good root system, the first time it rains, the first gust of wind, right? Reminds me actually of a story in Luke 6 or Matthew 7 about the wise man. I'm going to go to Luke 6, and I'm going to paraphrase the story, if that's okay with you. We know this one. The wise man built his house. I've got a song for everything, sorry. The singing preacher. I'm just joking. Okay? Now, the thing about this story is that we often in children's books, these parables make great little kid stories, but often the illustrators illustrate the story in a way that can actually cause a little bit of confusion, because you often have, I don't know, I've read a couple of children's Bibles and those kid stories, and you often have the pages kind of like slit in half, and you have the foolish man's house on the sand, and then you have the wise man, and it's on this like rock surface. There's no sand in sight, it's just rock. And it kind of always gave me the picture that there was that one man who was walking around, I'll just build it here on the sand. And then you have the other guy who's walking around and he's looking everywhere until he finds a rocky spot. And I'm going to build my house there. And I'm the wise guy. Okay? But actually, Israel is a desert. And everything is sand. And do you know where the rock is? It's under the sand. And in Luke, actually, in his story, he says these incredible words. Luke 6, verse 47. He says, in his account of the story, gosh, I can't see the 7. It says, whoever comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep. I'm going to read that again. Who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. He didn't go around looking for an easy spot and went, a rocky spot, I'm in. And it was just as easy for him to build it on a rock as the guy on the sand. No, no, no. He had to take the sandy spot and say, this is not going to be good enough, and started to dig deep, because he knew that at the first sign of wind or rain or storm, if he didn't, that house was going to come down. Digging is not a fun activity. That's why I don't do it, ever, because it's very hard, and it's very sweaty, and it's exhausting, and it's very unglamorous. But I wanted to say, just point out that in both cases, the sand and the sand, the storm still came. Digging his foundation onto that rock didn't stop the storm coming, but it did stop the house from falling. And I wanted to encourage you, you are that house. You need to dig deep, especially in times when you are waiting on God, when you are in a weird transition phase where you feel like things have changed. What's going on? These moments often feel like God has gone on holiday. You're praying to a like metal ceiling, and the prayers go boing and they bounce right back. In those times, what is often the first thing we do? Oh, God doesn't love me anymore. I must be doing something wrong. There must be sin in my life. There's sin, right? And I'm not saying that can't be reasons, right? I'm not making fun of those things. But it's hard work. And it's not glamorous. But when I say dig deep, what do I mean? Just like he said to Joshua, dig deep into the word. If you want to hear what the Lord is saying, if you want to increase your faith, the Bible says faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. He didn't say hearing full stop. He said hearing and hearing more than once. Dig deep, so that when that storm comes, the house doesn't fall. When the lie comes, you've got the answer. You've got the rebuttal. You're not going to be like, oh, that could be true. You can immediately spot a lie. You know, they say that they train people in banks to tell if money's counterfeit. Do you know how they do that? They don't give them counterfeit money and say, feel the money, can you feel it's counterfeit? They don't do that. They only ever let people that are training in a bank or in those reserve banks ever touch genuine money. And they're counting money all the time, so that the minute something is off, they go, whoa, this doesn't feel right. That's how they train them. That's how we should be training. We should be listening to the truth so much so that when a lie comes, whoa, something's off. Dig deep in the word. Dig deep in prayer. Habakkuk prays. First verse of Habakkuk says, "O Lord, why are you not listening to me?" I've never prayed that prayer. I've been asking you and asking you and asking you, and you are doing nothing. Where are you? You know where. I'm going through this chaos in my life, and this is the time you choose to ignore me. And this is my best part. Then God says, and in Habakkuk, he's praying that he's saying the Israelites, Lord, the world it's chaos. The Israelites are in sin. Please come and save us. Come and sort them out and save us. And God says, sure, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send the Babylonians to come and destroy them. And he's like, that's not what I was asking. Don't come and destroy us. They're even worse than the Israelites. It's not going to change anything. But sometimes God's answer or God's timing or God doesn't make sense. But that's when you've got to have that deep-rooted faith to say, God, I don't understand why you have to send the Babylonians. It doesn't make sense to me. But I'm going to go up on the wall as a watchman. And I'm going to just trust in your big picture. You can see the big picture. I can't. But I trust you in this situation. And the last way to dig deep into community. Usually when we're going through stuff, we feel like isolating. I don't have time for those smiley, happy, huggy people. I'm feeling sad and sorry for myself. Don't do that. God's designed this gathering, this community, for us to encourage each other. For us to say, take heart, take courage. God is with you. Don't lose out on those opportunities to be in the community of believers who are there to encourage you. When you read about the armor of God, he talks about the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, belt of truth. Put on the whole thing, the whole get up. And then he says, and when you have done everything, stand. Take courage. Unyielding. Be unyielding. But you got to do everything. You got to dig deep. You got to build that foundation of faith. Don't make the harvest, the breakthrough, the promise, the miracle that you're trusting become the answer to your problem. There is only one answer, and that is Jesus. But we can become so fixated on the answer that we think is going to solve our problems. That financial breakthrough, that maybe falling pregnant, something you've been praying for a while, that change in the relationship, that's not actually the answer. It is something that God can absolutely bless you with and use to keep, in your life. But it's still not the answer. What you will find when you are waiting, in that waiting period, when you're stuck in the middle, is you will find him. He's there. That's the answer. And that's the reward. And then the harvest is like an awesome byproduct. But don't become so focused and every prayer, every time you're worshiping, every time you're there, you're focused on that answer to that prayer, that you forget to seek the one who is the answer. Don't be so focused on his hand and what he can do for you that you forget about him. Dig deep. If we're entirely honest, most of our lives are lived in the middle. And I'm going to tell you this too. Whatever it is that God's promised you, he will fulfill it. And then there'll be another one. And then that will die, and then there'll be another one. It's not going to be the one size fits all. I've had my breakthrough. Good luck for you guys. I'm just going to sit back and wait now till eternity because I've had mine. But we do have that life sometimes, that green pastures and the babbling brook. Just remember, Israel's a desert thing, no green pastures there. Not like the children's books. Their green pastures are rocky, sandy areas with little tufts of grass. That's when David said green pastures, that's what he meant. Okay, it's not always going to be a one size fits all. That's why you can't allow the miracle to be the answer, because it will eventually, you'll need another one. There's a young girl in our prayer group who's been struggling to fall pregnant. And we've been praying with her, and she's fallen pregnant. She's just about to go now into her third trimester. And she came, and this is not a judgment, please don't understand my heart here. I'm just giving it as an example. Now she's on the prayer group with another list of prayers. Now they need financial help because now they've got a new child coming along, and this and that, and she's got a maternity leave and she can't earn money, and that's going to be the story. And God's going to take you all the way along. He says, I'm with you. So don't make that the thing. Jesus is always the answer, and he's the prize. This is exactly the time when Jesus commands you to have Tharseo, to take courage. Remember that it isn't raw willpower. It's an internal boldness that comes from your solid foundation and knowing that I am is with you. If your faith is built on the hype of the seed, you will abandon ship when God seems silent. And if your faith is built on the goosebumps of the breakthrough, you can collapse under the weight of the Saturday. the time in the tomb, the waiting. Like the wise man who dug deep, that waiting period demands that you know him deeply. It forces you to build your foundation on his unchanging character and not your shifting circumstances. Tharseo means that in the absolute dead silence of the Saturday, you can look at that sealed tomb and you can say, I don't see anything moving. I don't hear anything happening, but I know him. And because I know him, I know that he hasn't left the room. And this morning I just felt I wanted to sing a song over you. I know I've sung a few already. But one of the best gifts that God has given us is that okay? Is our communion time, the Holy Sacrament. Because it is the time where we can remind ourselves of the covenant that we have with him. The covenant that says, you are mine. My blood is a sign that you are mine. And that because you are mine, I will never leave you. Take heart, InCourage. Take heart. He is in the waiting. And he's never failing.